Imagine a peaceful night, abruptly shattered by a blood-curdling scream. Picture a humble home, nestled in the heart of a quiet town, where the moonlight gently caresses the rooftops, and the crickets serenade the silence with their rhythmic symphony. In this home, a young boy, no older than 12, lay in his bed, lost in the world of dreams. An ordinary boy with an ordinary life, living in an ordinary town. His parents, hard-working folks, had retired for the day, their soft whispers of love fading into the stillness of the night. This tranquility, however, was short-lived. Like a bolt of lightning tearing through the calm night sky, a scream echoed from the parents' bedroom. A scream so chilling it could freeze the blood in your veins. The boy's eyes snapped open, his heart thudding against his ribcage like a wild drum. Fear, like an icy wind, swept over him, sending shivers down his spine. The house, once a sanctuary of love and warmth, now echoed with the sinister whispers of the unknown. The boy, driven by instinct, slipped from his bed, his small body trembling like a leaf in a storm. He could hear his own breath, ragged and heavy, drowning out the deafening silence that followed the scream. His mind raced, conjuring images of monsters and boogeymen, but he knew deep down that reality could be far more terrifying. Deciding to hide seemed like the only option. With a silent prayer, he crawled under his bed, the cold floor beneath him a stark reminder of the nightmare unfolding around him. Under the bed, the boy's heart pounded in his chest, waiting for the silence to break. He held his breath, his small hands clenched into fists, his eyes wide with terror. Each second that ticked by felt like an eternity, the silence as oppressive as the darkness that enveloped him. Yet he waited, the fear of the unknown far outweighing the fear of the known. Under the bed, the boy's heart pounded in his chest, waiting for the silence to break. As the boy lay there, the silence was deafening, until the sound of heavy boots echoed in the hallway. The boy, huddled under his bed, felt his heart pound like a wild drum, each beat echoing the rhythm of the boots on the wooden floor. The air was heavy with fear, the kind of fear that wraps around you like a cold, damp blanket and refuses to let go. The boots, each step a thunderous declaration of an impending doom, were getting closer. The sound was so distinct, so terrifyingly clear, that the boy could imagine the boots, old, weather-beaten, and stained with the stories of 100 battles. He could almost see the laces, frayed and worn, holding together the remnants of what might have once been a proud pair of army boots. Then the door creaked open, the rusty hinges whining in protest, adding to the symphony of terror. The boy squeezed his eyes shut, not daring to look, but the image of the man in the army boots was already seared into his mind. He was massive, a towering figure that seemed to suck the air out of the room. The boots, now visible, were just as the boy had imagined, maybe even more intimidating. The man's presence filled the room like a storm, the atmosphere charged with an unspeakable dread. The boy could smell him, a mix of sweat, gunpowder, and something else, something indefinable that made his stomach churn. He could hear him breathing, the sound harsh and ragged, like a beast after a long hunt. The boy's heart threatened to burst out of his chest as he heard the man move closer, the floorboards groaning under his weight. He wanted to scream, to cry out for help, but fear had stolen his voice, leaving him mute and helpless. With a swift movement, the man reached under the bed, grasping the boy's ankle. The last thing the boy felt before his world turned black was the cold iron grip of the man in the army boots. The boy was dragged from his hiding spot, his eyes wide with terror as he faced the intruder. In the depths of his fear, the boy twisted and turned, kicking aimlessly into the darkness. His small fists pounded against the iron grip of the man, but it was like hitting stone. The man was immovable, a bulwark against the boy's desperate struggle. His strength was undeniable, his presence overpowering. The man's army boots echoed ominously in the silence, each stomp a grim reminder of the boy's predicament. The boy could only stare at the man, his heart pounding like a wild drum. The man's stern gaze bore into him, a look that held a chilling mix of determination and relief. Then the man spoke. His voice was deep and gravelly, like a rough stone grinding against another. The words he uttered were as chilling as the winter wind, yet held an air of strange familiarity. "We've been searching for you for 200 years. 200 years. The boy couldn't comprehend it, couldn't wrap his mind around the enormity of it. His heart pounded in his chest, the man's words reverberating in his head. How was it possible? He was just a boy, barely 10 years old. What could he have done to warrant such a long search? The man's words were like a puzzle, pieces of a jigsaw that made no sense. The boy could only stare, fear and confusion etching lines on his young face. 200 years. The phrase echoed in his mind, a haunting mantra that seemed to grow louder with each passing second. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls inching closer, the ceiling pressing down. He felt a cold shiver run down his spine, his young mind unable to fathom the depth of the mystery that had just been unveiled. As the man's words echoed in the room, the boy felt a cold shiver run down his spine. With those words hanging in the air, the boy was left to contemplate their chilling meaning. The sentence echoed in his mind, a cacophony of confusion and fear. 200 years? It was a concept that a child of his age could hardly grasp. His heart pounded in his chest as if trying to escape the confines of his body, matching the rhythm of his racing thoughts. His mind was a whirlpool, swirling with fragments of the past and questions about the future. The comfort of his parents' bedroom, the warmth of his mother's hug, the strength in his father's voice, all seemed to be ripped away from him. The man in the army boots had not only intruded his home, but also his reality. Suddenly, every bedtime story, every whispered tale of monsters under the bed felt frighteningly real. He was the protagonist in his own horror story, but there were no clear villains, no knights in shining armor, and no promises of a happily ever after. He was just a boy, lost in the labyrinth of time and mystery. He thought about his parents and their screams. His heart ached with an intensity he had never known before. He yearned for their comforting words, their soothing voices to tell him it was all a bad dream. But the silence of the house, the stillness of the night, only magnified his loneliness and fear. In the midst of the turmoil, he found himself pondering over the man's words, searching for him for 200 years. Did it mean he was special? Was he a key to some unresolved mystery or a link to an unexplored past? The thoughts were too grand, too intimidating for a child. But they were there, sown in the fertile ground of his young mind. As he lay there, under the bed, the dust bunnies his only companions, he let the weight of the situation sink in. His childhood had been abruptly interrupted by a reality he could barely understand. And as the night deepened, his fear transformed into a strange kind of resolve. As he lay there, the boy realized his life would never be the same. In the wake of the stranger's visit, the boy was left with more questions than answers. The eerie silence of the house was a stark contrast to the night's earlier chaos. His parents' bedroom remained empty, the harsh reality of their disappearance setting in. The boy was alone, left in the echo of the stranger's chilling words. Sleepless nights turned into days of relentless searching. The boy scoured through the remnants of his life, looking for any clue that could shed light on the enigma. His parents' belongings, once familiar and comforting, now seemed shrouded in mystery. Each object held a potential clue, a potential piece of the puzzle he was desperately trying to solve. The boy's determination grew with each passing day. He found himself scrutinizing every corner of the house, every piece of paper, every photograph, searching for an answer. The inexplicable absence of his parents and the stranger's cryptic words haunted his every thought. He was driven not just by the desire to understand, but also by a desperate need to feel less alone, less abandoned. His world had been turned upside down, but the boy was not one to cower. He was now a detective in his own life's mystery, a seeker in the quest for truth. He was determined to find answers, to uncover the truth that lay beneath the surface of his shattered reality. As the days turned into weeks, a newfound strength took hold of the boy. He was no longer just a victim of the night's horrific events, but a brave young man, ready to face whatever lay ahead. He realized that this journey, as daunting as it seemed, was his to undertake. It was a path fraught with uncertainty, but he was ready to embrace it, to unravel the mystery that had been thrust upon him. The boy knew he was caught up in something much bigger than he could ever have imagined. Y'all, we're wrapping up here, but don't you go anywhere just yet. Show some love, hit that like button. Fancy more content like this? Go on, subscribe and let that bell icon ring so you won't miss a beat. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, sharing is caring. Until next time, stay tuned.